Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and here we are at the third and final episode of the bending sheet metal in the home shop. You may somewhat wonder how it came about that I decided to make this series of how to lay out bends to get a cut length for any particular project, really. If you remember the series of videos that I made on the event that I had back here last year, I had Mick Clark, Aaron Green, Gene Winfield, and Ron Covell as demonstrators during that weekend. And in Ron Covell's demonstration, while he was laying out this piece, he said,
"Am I making sense so far?" So this is the simplest way I know how to do it, and it served me quite well for many years. And if somebody knows a better way, I want to know what it is. Honestly, I do. But
so that is what gave me the impetus to do this series on laying out and with using 3 different radiuses of bends. So what I'm going to be doing today is tying everything that we've done in the first 2 videos together by laying out 3 different shapes like this with 3 different radiuses in the corners. So all of them are going to be 4 inches at the top, 9 inches at the bottom. The upright leg is 14 inches, and this bend here is at 70 degrees, this bend is at 110 degrees, and this bend is at 90. This, where the 2 legs come together, will not have a bend in them. They would be, and I might do it at the end, they will have hand formed over a stake the same radius that's on the 3 other corners. And here are the 3 shapes that I'm going to be laying out with these sample pieces that I've showed you how to arrive at a tangent point in the last video. This one here you will see is pretty square, and that's the one that I'll be bending around that piece of 1/8 inch angle iron. This one has 1/2 inch diameter piece that I'm going to be bending it around, which gives me a 1/4 inch radius on each of the 3 bends. And on the last one over here, I'll be bending around a 1 inch piece of round tubing, so that gives me a 1/2 inch radius in each of these corners. And you'll notice this little red dot right there, and that's because I have all of my sample bends already cut and marked at 3 inches. These are 6 inches long. I want my bend, my first tangent, to be at 3 inches from one end, except this one here, which I've marked in red. This one I'm going to be placing right here in this corner, and by doing so, it will give you an idea of why these cut pieces have to be precise before you start. We're going to imagine this as being 3 inches from the tangent point to the end, and we'll be able to see at the end how that affects the actual layout if you don't have the correct length of sample pieces. So to make the layout or the setback on each of the 3 different radiuses of bend, you know, we've already went through making the 90s in the last video. So the 2 that I'll be using for the 70-degree bend and 110-degree bend on the angle iron, I don't have to use any setback whatsoever. On the one with the little dot, the red dot, which is going to be messed up right from the get, what I have to do is set these back 1/4 of an inch, because we're bending it around a 1/2 inch round piece of bar stock. So I'm just going to use a piece of 1/4 inch square, lay it right on the tangent point, and make a mark. And that is the mark that I'll be setting right on the edge of the table, which allows the tangent point to be a 1/4 of an inch back, so it's in the center of what I'm going to be bending around. And there we have all of the pieces laid out, ready to line up on the edge of the table. All of our tangent points are properly set, and now we can make the 110 and the 70-degree bends. And what I'm going to do first is set up my angle finders, I guess. I'll be using the sliding bevel square and this piece here that I always use to set up against the angle iron. It'll be preset, and I can use it. I can slide it easily fore and aft to pick up the angle that I'm bending. So to set up my first protractor, I have to take my dividers, set one end right on 0, and these are etched in so I can actually feel when the point of the divider is right in the groove. I'll set my next pointer right on 70. Open this up, and there's a little like a center punch mark right here. Put my divider in there. Sweep this, and I should feel it. Yep, there it goes. So this is now set at 70 degrees. Let me show you how I set up the sliding bevel square. So in order to set up my sliding bevel square, I just take a heavy piece of steel and set it right on the line, one line. Set another heavy piece of steel right on the second line. Open that up so it slides easily. Now I have the angle set. So now we can get on to bending of all of the pieces. This first one, since it only has one tangent point, I went ahead and bent that one up, and I'll show you how I go about bending the second one with a 1/4 inch radius, and you'll see they're pretty much the same with the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch radius. So the first thing I do is slide the piece in, and you remember I have a setback, a second line here. This is the tangent line, this is my setback for the 1/4 inch radius. I'm bending around a 1/2 inch piece of bar stock. So I set that mark right on the edge. Clamp that down. Then I take the first anglemometer that I set with the calipers, and that sits nicely right in here. And this is primarily why I use the 1/8 by 1 angle iron, is so I have a nice place to clamp this. So I'll slide this back approximately where this piece will line up after it's bent. So I'm going to keep my pressure as close to the radius that I'm bending. I'm going to keep the pressure here and bring this up until I get about there. I'm a little bit more than is necessary, and that's okay. That's where this piece of cardboard will come in. I'm going to put it on my piece, clamp it, get rid of that so I can control this a little bit better. And now, as you can see, the cardboard does not line up with this anglemometer. So I can open this up, and I'm doing all of my refining down in the radius. I'm not pulling up on the top here. So I can pull this out just slightly, just a tad more. We'll call that close enough. Now I can check this with my sliding bevel gauge, and now we are exactly at the degree of bend that we want. So now we're going to set the two gauges up for this shallower bend here, which is actually 110 degrees, and I've already got my calipers set at 110 degrees on my scale here. So I put 1 point in that little divot, and there we go. That point slides right in there. So this gauge is set. For the sliding bevel gauge, once again I put my heavy piece right on the line, put the second weight exactly on that one, loosen that up, now both gauges are set. So here again I have already made the first bend with a single tangent point, and there you can see the 3 different degrees of bend. The one in the center is obviously a 90. This one closed. The one that we're doing now is open. The next one we're doing is the open one here with the 1/4 inch radius. So once again, I'm going to slide in to my setback mark right on the edge of the table. Right there. Clamp it down. Bring my gauge in and put it approximately where I want it to be. And make my bend. And usually I go just slightly over. So when I put my cardboard on, I can slide it right up against the gauge. I want to line the bottom up with the gauge, and then I can start bringing this in. And I don't know how it happened, but that looks pretty dang good right there. Now I'll use my sliding bevel gauge to tune it in. All right, so there you can see that we're perfectly in line with the gauge. And here we have all 3 pieces. So let me get this third one bent, and we'll get over the board and start laying these out. So here we have all 3 of our 16 gauge aluminum pieces bent. They sharp bend just around a piece of 1/8 inch angle iron, around a 1/2 inch round piece of bar stock, which gives us a 1/4 inch radius, and bent around a 1 inch piece of tubing that gives us a 1/2 inch radius of bend. And before I get into laying these out on each of the different pieces here, I want to say just something short about the thinner material. If you are using 18 gauge or thinner material, you can put on a real sharp bend like this, you can put your tangent point right on the point that you're wanting to bend on. If you have a slight radius in your sheet metal, you're going to have to observe the amount of offset that you have both in the radius and in the thickness of the material to create a slight amount of setback. Here we have the tangent point here. I'm going to line that up, which also should be the line here. I'm going to make my mark here. And like I say, I've always got the 3 inch going in one direction. So here my 3 inch will be up this way. Line up my tangent point. Lay this right on the line. Make another mark right here at the end. And the last, the 90 degree, I have my 3" at this side. Line up my tangent point and make sure this is right on the line. And make a mark right there. Now all I've got to do is get all of these dimensions just like I've been doing. This is a nice hook rule, and I can put that hook right on there, bring this down, and then take my measurement here. Let me get the dimensions on here and I'll be right back. So here again we have dimensioned from the end to our tangent point, 3 5/8. We have 3 inches from the tangent point to the end of our bent piece. We have 11 15/16 to our tangent point. That gives from tangent point to tangent point 14 5/16. And then we have our 3 inches, our 5 11/16. Those two together is 8 11/16 from tangent point to tangent point. Here we have another 3 inches and 11 5/16 from there to the end of our bent piece. Add those two together, we get 14 5/16. So you add these 4 together and that gives you the cut length before you start laying out for your bends and bending. So here you can see all of the sums of adding each of these segments together, and each of these is the tangent point of each of your bend, and you can see here they grow slightly as the radius of your bend changes. The last number in the sequence here is the total, the cut length of each of the sample pieces. The line you see here with the arrow on it, that is where I will place this line on the edge of the table, and that allows the tangent point to slide under whichever the workpiece or the bending mandrel I'm using. This allows this area here to become the tangent point. So let's get over on the table and we'll start bending. So here we have all of our sample pieces laid out here, and we also have the samples of the bends that we've made, and each one of these is already bent to the exact degree of bend that we have on our drawings over there. So the first bend I'm going to make, slide this in, and if you remember this one, we want the tangent point just slightly back of the bend, and I've got it up against my square, so I can take my sample piece, slide it right in here, right up against the other one. Clamp them down. Make the bend as tightly as I can up against that piece of angle iron. And I already have a gauge that will tell me when I'm at 90 degrees. I can take that one off. Come to my next line Slide my piece in there, up tight against the angle iron. Clamp it down and bring it up until I'm matching my sample piece. And the last bend, we come out to our line, get it squared up. Slide our sample piece in there. Clamp. Make our bend, and we have a perfect piece right where it comes out, right where it's supposed to be. Now on the one with a 1/4 inch radius, if you remember on our second bend, we made it 170 thousandths long. So let's make the second bend, not this one, but the next bend is where our error will show up. Make sure those are flush. And remember, I'm lining up the line with the arrow up against the edge of the table, so I have an excellent reference point. Now this is the one no, it's it. It'll be the next one that'll be wrong. This is actually the one that will be wrong because we introduced the error in the piece in this leg. So this leg here is going to come out either short or long. What do you think? Get that right up against the, right on the edge of the table. Slide that in until it's tight. And you can see there that we came out that 170 thousandths long because we introduced the error in our sample piece by not having it exactly 6 inches long. And for our largest radius, 1/2 inch radius, bent around a 1 inch piece of tubing. Come out to the next arrowed line, and get that lined up on the edge of the table. Slide that right in there. Clamp it down. Make our bend. One more bend and we're done. Get the line right up on the table. And here again, we have a perfect part. Don't even have to hold it, just a little spring. What's that, 1/8 of an inch or so? So I can put a 1/2 inch radius on this side, 1/2 inch radius on this side, and we'll have a finished part. So there you have it. That's how using all of these sample pieces. It sounds like a long ordeal, but in effect, it is not. The amount of time that you would spend trying to change your dimensions just by using a known length, you can tell how much material is used up in different bins, and you'll know exactly that if your piece is 6 inches, you know exactly 3 inches to your tangent point, and then you'll know what amount was used up by what the radius is of your bend. And here we have how to bend sheet metal and do your layouts so you get your bends correct the first time around by using known lengths of pieces before you even start. You saw what happens if you have just a slight amount of error in the length that you originally had thought about using, whether it be 2, 3, 4, 6, doesn't matter. But make your test pieces an exact length so you know how much half of that is. That way, whatever material is taken up in the other half, you can keep track of. So here we've got the right angle bends, the 1/4 inch, and you can see that that is the 170 thousandths off. That was built into the piece that we were supposed to be relying on. and there is your 1/2-inch radius, and all 3 of these will lay right on top of the drawing that I've made, that I made all of these off of. So I hope this was very informative. Took quite a while to get everything going and then move all the cameras and all that stuff. So if you got something out of this video, I do like coffee. Give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Think about becoming a patron. See you later.